This is the Three Skeevers Podcast.
All right, episode 32 of the Three Skeevers Podcast with Grim from Grimsforge Gaming and myself, Icy, with Icyfire Gaming. How you doing, Grim?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good, pretty good. I can't wait for Mid-Year Mayhem in the next couple days to start. That's going to be a lot of fun. I know in between every Mid-Year Mayhem event, the time in between is just basically us practicing till the next one, so we can get all our ducks in a row by then. How are you feeling for this event coming up?
Oh, good. I think I don't remember the exact date, but it looks to me like it's going to be towards the middle or end of this coming month. So for Mid-Year Mayhem, yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to launch with Blackwood because they're going to do the Mid-Year Mayhem launch simultaneously on all platforms, right? On PC and console, and console doesn't get Blackwood until a week later, and then there's some type of update or something to that effect the week after that. So I have a feeling that it's probably going to be the second or third weekend, or maybe even start the last week of the month. So that's just my guess.
Yeah, I think that'll be on par too for what happened last year with it being at the end of June and early July. So, okay, no worries. Anyways, so we have our special guest today, Simurgh. How you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. How you doing?
Pretty good, pretty good. What do we got today, Grim?
So I guess the first thing is you've got a lot of projects going on right now. Like, so if we were to go to YouTube, you've got Ashes of Creation's a major content. You're a content creator for Ashes of Creation, and you're a content creator for ESO, and then you have podcasts of your own as well. So can you tell us about all these projects and what you have going on?
All right. Let me take a deep breath. So I primarily stream on Twitch pretty regularly. I'd say I'm probably a good between 5 and 6 days pretty regularly currently. And I do a lot of live streaming there, covering Ashes of Creation. Occasionally I get some Elder Scrolls Online streams in. And just a lot of like video game discussions, which is where we tie into like the podcast and stuff. On YouTube, I have the Simurgh channel, which is specifically Ashes of Creation content, which is what I've been curating there for several years now. Once I became an official content creator for them at the end of like 2017. The game is still in development, preparing for, and then I've got a couple other channels. I decided to, under some advice from a certain individual that I may or may not name, I decided to break off my content to kind of really separate all the different things that I was doing. And so I've got a Simurgh Gaming channel, which over the past month or so, I've grown to a couple hundred plus people that covers just variety. So it's where I put one of the podcasts now, the Looking for More podcast, which is a general gaming culture, sort of a kind of game rant, sort of a game development over MMORPGs, RPGs, just overall gaming culture and geek culture. Sometimes have developers on there, content creators, just gamers in general who are just really passionate about video gaming, specifically around those genres. And that one's 40 episodes, coming up on 41 episodes. And then on that channel is where the Simurgh Gaming channel on YouTube is where I host that podcast now, along with some variety gaming content. I'll do some yay or nay videos, which are like, would I recommend playing a game or not? And then more specifically lately, I've been doing a lot of like what the hell happened kind of things, which is like what's going on in game development, what's going on with these games that went to Kickstarter. Are they doing something kind of scammy? Are they kind of, being perceived as a scam starter, as I call it? Or, are the games in development doing pretty well? So we cover things like a variety of different things, like, things going on with New World recently with their cash shop debacle, things with World of Warcraft and their the Dark Portal Pass that was coming up and kind of how that impacts like the Burning Crusade Classic. So just a bunch of variety around the genre there. And then on the Simurgh ESO channel, which is the smallest of the channels currently, on that one, I am just mostly focusing on like theory crafting builds, things I just enjoy playing. I'm not trying to do anything meta min max. They're just things that are just fun. And anything that I pretty much feel is like fun for me, I feel like it could be fun to put out there for other people who might also resonate with it. Not a lot of guides or anything, mostly just like different builds, fun builds. I'm kind of working on here in the near future when I have some time doing some just, kind of like more casual player builds to where it's something that really performs well, has a really low bar for entry in terms of getting the gear, and just making it something that can perform really well for people. So I mostly just focus on builds there, but occasionally I'll do like, some top tips and stuff. One of those videos did make it onto the Elder Scrolls page about a year ago, when I had that video over on my other channel, like before I kind of separated things. Then I've also got the Ashes Pathfinder podcast, which is I guess you could say, has the most episodes over the course of the game's development at this time. We were at 100 and, oh my gosh, like 37, 38, I think this week. I lose count, episodes for that. And occasionally we have on, we've had the CEO, creative director, come on that several times over the years. And it's a primary Ashes of Creation podcast that's been covering the game and its development, basically covering it every week. That one's like, we do air these live. They do go to audio format on like Spotify, iTunes, and all that. But looking for more, and Ashes Pathfinders both air at 5 p.m. CDT, with the LFM show being on Thursdays and the Ashes Pathfinder show being on Sundays. And the Pathfinder show, we had Steven on not too long ago. We've been super dedicated in weekly content and weekly coverage of the game. And we actually have Margaret Crone, which I guess this is a bit of a heads up for anybody who actually cares about Ashes that listens to your show. But we have Margaret Crone, the community marketing lead, coming on June 27th. We had Steven on about a month ago, I think. And we have her coming on the 27th to kind of talk about just like, the different community marketing elements and kind of the content creator program revamp and kind of some of her experience since she's been on the team for the past couple of years. Kind of just curating a lot of community questions and things like that. So, and then aside from those things, I also I run a community curated website called asheshq.com, which is covering theory, crafting, discussion, analysis of Ashes of Creation. I have been actually gathering HQ team members recently, which are other content creators that will help to curate content there. Some curators aren't content creators, but they're going to help to curate pages and update pages on the website. Not like a wiki, just more of like guides that are kind of maintained by the community, a community of people that help to curate the content there. The HQ team is kind of like the spearhead of that website, though, which are the people that provide video content that helps to outline the different game systems and help people to understand Ashes of Creation. And the HQ specifically is there to make information easy to digest for people, because Ashes of Creation has a lot of layers, and making it easy for people to understand and kind of easy to digest so that they can understand the game and its functions, its systems, mechanics that are involved is something that we strive for there. And it's currently getting a facelift, so it looks really nice now. And I'm adding a ton of new pages to outline about every element of the game. And once I get done doing that, then I get to move back over to my personal website, which is simurghq.com, to kind of make sure that's where I put all the stuff that I'm doing that I just talked about, and tying all those things in together there, so that there's like a central hub for pretty much everything I'm doing currently. And I think that about covers it in terms of content.
That's
Wow.
enough. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot.
I'm high-fiving you in the air right now, because
Thanks, man.
I know the amount of work that you're just working away right now. Very exciting to be on board too this early with Ashes. Like, if you think about it, what's your guess as how long until that game launches or goes live, if you had to guess?
Had actually had a conversation. Like, I feel like a good running estimate for any MMORPG in development is probably to aim a goalpost realistically of 5 to 7 years. And I would probably say that's a solid goalpost and expectation, perhaps, for anyone waiting on a game of that size. And that being said, I think I'd probably even say like AAA, or just a studio that has the size and capabilities Ashes of Creation's Intrepid Studios does. And we're in the 5-year range. I feel that, well, not quite. Actually, 5 years wouldn't be until technically the middle of like 2022 when they did their Kickstarter. If we wanted to actually gauge it that way, if we went off of when the game was found out to be in the works, that would have been the end of 2016. So I think probably a couple years is realistic, assuming that there's no big delays or anything. It could be less, but I tend to speculate a little more realistic on the possibility of there being delays and things. They had one big delay over a year and a half, 2 years ago, when they were working on a lot of the foundational coding and stuff for the back end. And they've since really made a lot of gains in the testing currently, which is, by the way, something I could talk about because I've been involved in testing since Alpha 0. We recently had the okay from Steven to share. And I actually messaged him. I was like, hey, just want to make sure, man, just want to clarify, all the way back to Alpha 0, I could talk about all the experiences up until now. And he was like, yes. I'm like, all right, cool, thanks. Because I just wanted to make sure I wasn't, because I've tested a lot. And I just wanted to make sure. So the beauty of that is I can share all of my experience since the end of 2017 now. And I can say that there's been significant gains specifically in like the past year or so has been, I mean, they have made significant gains. And the past several months have been, boy, they've just been really, really big gains. So they keep the momentum going and they can continue to get more people hired at the studio that fit the studio culture. I think the goalpost of 2 years or less is very, very, very likely.
Yeah, see, as a content creator, I think that's super exciting for you. You're on the bus well before it even hits the road. You know, it's doing the ready check right now. They're checking the air pressure and all that stuff and tire pressure. And so that's pretty exciting to be a content creator that early. And then also it sounds like the developers embrace your efforts and are acknowledging your efforts and assisting your efforts. So man, look out. Like your content for Ashes of Creation's kind of like early Bitcoin, I think. How do I invest? How do I get involved? Because in a year or two, this thing's gonna be an absolute monster for you. So that's exciting.
You know, I've already got a group of people that are behind me, and I'm really lucky. I worked pretty hard last year to just my focus has always been community. I'd say more so than just like really my channels, or to me, it's more important to have like a healthy, thriving community, the people I just enjoy spending time with. If I don't have that, like the rest of it just feels pointless to me. All the work feels pointless. And so I feel very fortunate because over the past like year or so, as the Ashes of Creation community itself is bolstered, so has the people that gather around what I call my central flame, or the hub that we have, so to speak. And there's a lot of great people there. We last year we raised $10,000 for charity towards the Rady Children's Hospital in San Diego. And like, you know, I mean, that was just probably the most reinforcing affirmation that this is definitely what I should be doing. So stay in the course, man.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
How do you tell us more about this LFM podcast and what involvement does it have with ESO? Like what coverage have you done for ESO?
Oh man, I've talked about the Elder Scrolls Online a lot on that show. I've even referenced the Elder Scrolls Online on the Ashes Pathfinder podcast, but the LFM show specifically really does hit on a lot of the variety of MMORPGs, the ones that are just drive you bonkers and the ones that you love the hate. And the Elder Scrolls is one that I love the Elder Scrolls. I love the entire universe. It's one of my favorite universes in fantasy, along with like the Warcraft universe, and now the Ashes of Creation universe. And we've talked a lot on there, I think, about some of the things that have been problematic from my experience. A lot of the bigger things that have been happening with, of course, ZeniMax Online Studios, Bethesda being purchased by Microsoft, which was a really big discussion point. Talking about a lot of the big changes to the CP system was something that we chat over the recent past about. I think the Endeavor system is something more recently that I've spent a little time sharing and talking about there. The LFM show is, again, it's like really just about bringing people of different walks. We've got like the Nathan Napalm. He does a lot of more niche content around like he's more YouTube content. I think he covers a lot of like EverQuest, and he's more specifically focused on Pantheon Rise of the Fallen right now. And then we've got Renfell on there currently, who basically created the universe, the stories for Saga of Leucemia. But there's a whole debacle around that one. So it's a whole different story. But we have people that kind of come on there, and it's kind of a place for people who are passionate about gaming to just talk about the things they love seeing, that's driving them nuts, like cautionary tales. And the Elder Scrolls comes up there a lot as sometimes a point of frustration. Also a very heavy point of nostalgia. I think I've been very excited about the CP changes. Sucks when you think about 3600, but at the same time, it feels like the CP system is so much more meaningful than it used to be. At least in my mind, it is. It makes a lot more sense to me. Still another reason to grind, and now CP actually feels like it has a reason to have X amount. You're not just like locked out at a certain point, but man, mostly I just talk about the universe as a whole. I mean, it's the game that I've played since beta. I always said if there was an Elder Scrolls MMORPG, I would probably always play it. And I have always played it on and off, whether it was like I take a break and I come back, or I've just been like dug in deep for months and months on end. It's definitely one of my favorite stories, and so it comes up there as a point of reference of just really good stories. And I mean, the new expansion coming out, man, it's like I'm really happy that the month of June there's not really any showcasing of Ashes of Creation, because I plan to play the hell out of this expansion and enjoy the story. And Oblivion was my favorite Elder Scrolls game.
So you're going to get a taste of that jumping into those Oblivion portals. So
I nerded so hard when I saw those portals. I was like, oh my God. I was nerding so hard. I was geeking out to the max when I saw just, oh my God, we're going to be able to go in there. And it's so nostalgic, man. It looks so nice compared to back in the day, because it's gotten such a facelift. But,
you had brought up the CP tree. The one thing I did notice, I agree with you. I like the champion point changes because before you could really have it all. You could be a medium armor, cap resistance, for PvP sakes, you could just have it all. And so I like what they did. I felt like it was good changes, and I don't like that they kind of dialed back a little bit going into Blackwood with the CP, because now I can jump on and it only takes about 1100 to 1200 CP. And at 1100 to 1200 CP, you have it all, at least all that's available. I have all my slottables and all my passives. So it makes you wonder, what's the point of 3600? Why is 3600 the cap when you can have every passive and every slottable at 11 or 1200 CP? So I thought that was kind of interesting, but maybe they'll adjust it as they go. So
yeah.
Go ahead.
I just like to think of it like they're kind of future proofing. So I'm hoping that delta, that difference between, we'll just say 1100 and 3600, they're going to fill that whole constellation with whatever it is coming down the line. That's what I would like to think, if they're going to, make it that much, that they're going to give us so much more champion points to use. So
I can't help but wonder, like I'm not one of their, I'm not on their team. I don't have any inside scoops or anything like that. But, I look at it. I'm a patterns person, like I look at the patterns. I look at the what seems like the method. And if the champion tree revamp, and this is just me speculating and just, educated guess. But my mind is like, if the champion tree, if they're really wanting to test out if this is really viable in its current iteration, and to build upon this and see if these changes genuinely do benefit the game as a whole, then I think in my mind it kind of makes sense to put all that stuff that maybe you want to test up front, to where it's easier to access for the greater population, because I think the majority of people could get to 1200 relatively quickly if they play regularly. And I use that term lightly, like, quickly. I think it's still a significant time to put time in for somebody who plays like as an avid player in the game. I think they can get to 1200 relatively quickly right now. But then it kind of makes me wonder too, like if they put all that up front for the people who need to be able to perform well, and then, but I think there's also people that may not even care about that. There's the more casual people who may just focus on like the increases to like looting treasure, or to increases to, speed, mount speed and sprint and all that, and quicker looting and of gatherables and whatnot. But I mean, people might be more focused on this other stuff than that. But I think for people that are focused specifically on the end game, they probably put it up there so that the people who do have like 3600 don't have like this crazy advantage over the people that don't have as much, or can maybe play as much. But I think also the idea of, testing it out. I mean, because if you have a greater population of people who could test it out, at that easier to, it's easier for them to get to that point, to get those points, to try them all. Then you get more data back on that too. And then I think whenever you look at them potentially expanding upon that and building on that in the future, like, Icy was saying, then I could totally see that side too, of the potential to expand upon it. And after you've kind of tested out the maybe first stage.
Yeah. See, I think this is all intriguing, and who could answer this for us? Icy, can you pull our second guest for today's podcast in, Miss Gina Bruno?
Oh,
just kidding. She's not here.
I was like, you know something I don't.
She never responded to my email. So.
Feels bad.
Feels bad. But yeah, that would be somebody that'd be perfect to kind of like, hey, what's the, I want to know just the plans for long term, and just point those things out. Like 3600's a lot. We could do everything with 1100. What's the plan, and so I don't know, man, maybe she doesn't know and whatever, but that would have been funny. Anyway.
So I guess to what Simurgh was saying with the, I guess like kind of make like the base very simple, and then all the like slottables like easily accessible, because like right now you kind of have to like daisy chain your way up to get to something. Not so much as it was. I'm trying to think the last not so much for the last CP system, but for some of the nodes you have to, you got to put some points into it or into a few just to get to one particular node. But I think in terms of aesthetics, they have like they have a mage, they have an archer, and some warrior guy that they literally have to fit the constellation around, right? Kind of like you're connecting the dots on a drawing or something like that. I think that kind of limits them, where they can't make the structure as simple, because you're trying to match a creatively. But if you just kind of left it as like maybe just one big circle, and then you just had one dot in the middle that was like your base, and then any other point along the circle was a slottable, so then you just had a circle of dots that you could just connect to any which one. Then once you get to 4 dots, then now you're on par with anybody else, no matter what CP they were. And then that would just require everybody to have, we'll say the initial node in the center of the circle was 50, and then 4 slottables we'll just say is 50 all around. So you just need 250 CP, and then no matter however much CP you gain after that, we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point too.
So how long have you been playing ESO?
Oh man, since was it like the fall of 2013, before the game launched? I was doing the closed. All right, this is a little bit of a reference. So anybody who played on PC NA who remembers when the game launched might have remembered the guild's name before I have since renamed it. At launch, we were called Force, and we were one of the most dedicated PCNA guilds. We were kind of one of the ones that you kind of knew the name of when the game launched, because we had a lot of top end kind of like WoW raiders and things of that nature that were in there. Really, really good players, and I led that guild through the closed betas, into the launch of the game. Unfortunately, a lot of those people that were super into the raiding at the time, and if you remember the state of the game at that point, it was a little rough. A lot of people were really upset about the fact that you could go get those PvP passives and active abilities, and you could utilize that in the trials at the time. And so a lot of them, unfortunately, with that and the grind of getting to max level, which was pretty extensive. I mean, I got there because I grinded really hard. There were a lot of people that just got so burned by the grinding process at the launch. And it was like basically all story. I mean, it was like just doing quests to get your XP. And so a lot of them stopped playing. And so that was, after that, I was like, all right, I'm going to get my Emperor. And then, then I'll see what happens. I got my Emperor, I think it was like August or something, 2014. And then after that, I kind of played casually, on and off, come back for more like serious phases. But I've been playing it since the very beginning. So I've seen it through the good, the bad, the ugly.
Yeah. It's I don't miss the VR rank grind, that's for sure. And when they first initially announced that and had that change, it wasn't account wide either. So I did that grind on 2 separate characters before they connected, the accounts. So that way, once you've done it once, but it's whatever. It's all water under the bridge now.
The past,
Yeah. What's your favorite aspect of ESO? PvE, PvP, RP? What do you like?
I have been, that's a good question. So I was really enjoying the Battlegrounds. I play them quite a bit. I do tend to get kind of burned out on them sometimes. So I do shift over, and I'll kind of just really play them a lot, and then I'll kind of get to a place where the whole the proc sets kind of get a little old for me. It kind of gets a little boring. So I'll kind of rotate, and I might get into this mode of just dungeon grinding. Just basically, I got 16 characters or whatever. So I'll basically just toon hop, and there's always something to do on another character. So I can, go unlock some skill points, or I can go get some sky shards. I mean, the thing about it, Elder Scrolls Online is the world looks just gorgeous, and they've done an amazing job with the art style and the aesthetic, design that they went for. So it's a good balance of realism, but not too real to where the graphics get outdated really quick. So for that reason, just I'll run around, and I mean, I could be picking herbs, listening to music, hanging out and chatting with my friends. I could run around. I get on, and I don't do RP. I have my little RP moments where I'm lights, justice reigns, and I'll scream it as I'm going into battle or something, but nothing where I go pick a point in the world and have some dialogue or anything. But mostly I'd say PvP is. I haven't enjoyed Cyrodiil PvP for years now, because I look at it from the perspective of cost. The time. I don't feel for the amount of time you spend, that I don't feel it's as rewarding for me as Battlegrounds have been. But I would say I balance in between feeling my hardcore days where I just want to get really into theory crafting and create a build, and then kind of getting into my days where I'm I just kind of feel jumping into a dungeon and just putting myself on autopilot, or running around and picking up sky shards, and clearing points on a map off on a character that I give a little bit more love. I don't mind doing those things, so it's kind of therapeutic for me to do those other things. Whereas the PvP thing is my try hard. I mean, I did some trials with some homies last night. The YOLO Guild. I was hanging out with a lot of them, and went and did a trial with them. It was just fun times. I think we did. Oh my god, this is horrible. I can't remember the name right now. It's probably because it's early in the day. I don't know what to say. Halls of Fabrication. Thank you. I swear I knew it. It's early for me. You guys are it's 3 p.m., dude.
I mean, I wasn't gonna say nothing.
Yeah. This is early in the day for me because my sleep schedule. But anyway, yeah, the point is we went and did that, and that was a lot of fun. Just that feeling of successfully completing something as a group is always just a really good time. It always goes back to community for me, though. If I can engage in good times with good people, that's my jam, man.
Why do you think or for you in particular, the rewards in Cyrodiil aren't as good as the rewards in Battlegrounds? I know you're not talking the actual rewards, but I think it's I got a sense that it's just the style of the gameplay or something like that.
I liked it a lot more. Okay, so it just has changed. The dynamic in there has changed so much over the years that, it doesn't take you so long to take a keep anymore. I mean, I'm sure that there's a lot of reasons for that. The main thing for me, though, is like you spend so much time traveling. You could be running to get somewhere for a battle, which is totally understandable. It's a massive map. It's meant to be that way for a reason. But that sometimes you go to get there and the keep is gone so quickly, or it used to be, it got flagged like early days. I'm not talking early days here, but it would get flagged and it was like, oh no. And then it would be like the battle would last a while. I mean, you still get your battles like that, but you could blow a keep up and take it if you're, even a small coordinated group relatively quickly. And you just couldn't take it as a small group quickly back in the day. So you'd have more time to get there. So it's like that element of, traveling on your mount to get somewhere, you get there and it's already gone. While I understand that's completely the way the game is designed, and that's just the nature of the beast. When I look at it from a cost benefit analysis for me, and I talk about my time, I feel like I get more opportunities for success queuing in Battlegrounds than I do in Cyrodiil, kind of running around a lot. But I'll still go in Cyrodiil just to run around for fun. I just don't always now. I don't always now do it for the actual PvP. Yeah.
Deltia likes to refer to it as a mount simulator.
Yeah, it so is. Yeah, I'd agree with that.
When I asked your favorite aspect, I had PvE, PvP, and RP in there, and I'm gonna probably continue to add RP to people because I think that there's this. I don't necessarily partake in the RP aspects of it, but I had 2 role play encounters over just this last week, and both of them were over on the EU server. I've been leveling characters over there.
Oh, nice.
And I'm standing at the Battlegrounds quest giver, and I'm leveling my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle over there, Leonardo. And there's a Smeagol. There's a little guy, makes him look perfectly like Smeagol. Remember Icy how Emma was using that emote where he's like crouched over eating a rat or eating something?
Yeah, we I'm just laughing just thinking about what we did to make it look like that. So he was using the bestiality personality that you get from March of Sacrifices, and then he had his wood elf, as emaciated, as small as possible, and then we took a picture of him in the sewers, and then I had my my chat bubbles up, and then I had Emma say like, just like, my precious or something like that, so it can really sell the scene there. It was a pretty good photo.
Yeah, so it was funny because that reminded me of Emma. And so when Icy showed me Emma in that costume, they had Emma out in the sewers, like just hunched over eating a corpse or eating a rat or something. And I come up on it and I it looked just like him. It was so awesome. Well, I'm over on the EU server and there's a guy named Smeagol over there who was doing the exact same thing. And he's standing around. He's a CP Nightblade standing around waiting for his battleground to pop. And I saw that and I messaged him. I said, hey, that is awesome. That is awesome. I love seeing that. And he just starts talking in zone chat or in say, just completely role playing, and I was like, oh, this guy's got like a full script. Like he's using a full script here. He's going off script. And I was laughing so hard. And then he traded me and I thought it was an accident, so I canceled the first time. Then he traded me and he said, trade me. And so I traded him, and he traded me a white level 1 ring called that he made, and his name was Smeagol the Precious or something like that. And so he trades me this ring and a fish stick. Those are the two things he traded me. And I'm like, oh, that's so funny. What does he just like trade these things? Or like if somebody trash talks him, he mails them to him, you know, like you got killed by Smeagol, and pretty funny. And so while we're standing there, he goes, well, time to put my Precious on. And he goes, bye. And then he just disappeared in front of me. So I'd imagine that his queue popped for Battlegrounds. And that's, you know, before he disappeared into the Battleground, that's what he did. And I thought that's really cool, like very creative. And so then I'm down in the sewers. And right as soon as you pop into the sewers, the main entrance of the sewers, there's probably about 10 people all in the same guild. And they're lined up, or they're lining up, and they're posing, doing the salute pose. And of course, I'm on Leonardo. I look like a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, and I see this, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna jump in here and see what they do, you know, because they're role playing pretty hard. And so I just jump in and do the same pose, and two of them acknowledge me, and they just like build the line around me and work with, like I'm part of them now. And one of the other ones actually said one of us, you know. And so I just stood there for a little bit and was listening as their leader was pacing back and forth. We're going to go into the wilds. You need to be brave. You need strike first, strike fast, strike hard. And, you know, he's pacing back and forth and, you know, giving his speech like they're getting ready to go into PvP battle. And I thought that was pretty funny. And I wasn't going to wait too much longer. So I was like, well, I got a pizza on the way. I got to go, and just, you know, dipped out. But I think that's probably, I know Northhold runs into some RP groups from time to time, but I think that's probably, that's the most, that's the group that I don't know the most about, I guess, in ESO, is the RP, you know, groups that are out there and what they're doing and how they're having fun. And so I at least want to acknowledge them. So,
yeah, I think for me, as far as RPing goes, you know, whenever I'm on my Khajiit Necro and somebody says something in his own chat, I'll just say something like, this one thinks you're an idiot, or something like that. Just to, like, you know, appropriate the correct form of speech that Khajiits use.
Yeah.
Funny.
So tell us about Ashes of Creation, even though we focus on ESO, but we want to know about Ashes of Creation. And then can you tell us about the likenesses, differences of Ashes versus ESO, and, you know, both the good and the bad?
Yeah, sure. Okay, let me see if I can put this into a nice, easy to digest Ashes HQ, right? Discussion point there. So okay, the main gist is, I mean, kind of give you the same thing I regurgitate to everybody, which is, you know, the Ashes of Creation is an open world, non-faction based MMORPG. It's set in a high fantasy world. The goals with the game is not to be a WoW killer. It's just to bring the massive feeling back to a massively multiplayer game, which is an MMORPG. So there's several of their design pillars that really stand out when you kind of like think about that. So the biggest one in my mind is the just massive foundational component, which is their node system. And the node system essentially is, you have 118 nodes in the world, right? This 480 square kilometer world at launch, and the 103 regular nodes, 118 total, but 103 of these regular nodes that are spread out in the world that have their own zones of influence, right? So everything that you do in the world, every experience that you gain, and depending on where you're at, will be contributing into a node based on if you're in its zone of influence or not, right? And the zones of influence aren't these like perfectly well-shaped zones and circles or squares. They're, you know, abstract shaped. And so as you're running around as a player, whatever you're doing, any experience you're gaining is contributing to, via the node of influence, the node. And the nodes level up. So you go from like an encampment basically at the earliest stages to a metropolis at the final stages. And there's limited amount of metropolises. Before getting into too many of the details on that, though, just basically the thing you got to know is when you gain experience as a player, your experience is contributed to a node that helps that node develop, and that's how civilization develops in this barren landscape that is Vera when you get there. And these nodes, these towns, these different cities and things that can sprout up are shaped by the experience, but also, like, say you've got a bunch of dwarves, right? And the majority of the people that are dwarves or the Dunir are gaining experience in a zone of influence for a specific node. And let's say that you got a lot of dwarves in that location at that time, and that's gaining more experience than a lot of other nodes. Well, it will develop quicker and further along, and its style and architecture will be based on the highest contributing race. So then, as a result, the Dunir architecture style is what you're going to see be most prominent for that node as it develops and continues to develop. So that's kind of their, like, one of the number one pillars that are outlined is the node system, right? The other one's meaningful conflict. Having meaningful, conflict just means that, like, there's a big risk versus reward element in the game. So that it is an open world game. There is PvP in the game. So you've got things like meaningful conflict, which would be like your castle system, node sieges, guild wars, battlegrounds, caravan system. You got like the economy, which is your other pillar, which is like your third pillar, and the economy is essentially it focuses on incentivizing the players to interact with the world. So you think through trade, buying, selling, these caravans that we talked about, like, shipping goods to another marketplace in another city, essentially like mirroring this competitive advantage that different cities, different regions have in the world, like we do in our own, right? Thinking about maybe a specific area in the world is the place you get mithril. Maybe you don't get mithril in every other part of the world. Maybe it's a specific area, and maybe a town or a city that sprouts up is by this, area that mithril is farmable. Well, then that gives them something to trade to other regions. There's also the narrative, and that's like the fourth main pillar, aside from the economy, and that's the narrative is the story, the overarching narrative that is delivered both to the individual and the greater members of the community. This is the one that kind of holds it all together. You could have different NPCs, different quests, things like that can tend to pop up in the world. And, you might be somebody who gets a quest where somebody doesn't. And it could be a combination of like your class, your race, some other narrative storyline that you've been following that we have yet to know about. They're keeping a lot of the lore close to the chest, although we do know quite a bit about the game and the lore around the game. It's pretty rich. Ashes of Creation comes from a homebrewed campaign that Stephen Sharif created for his D&D campaign, or actually Pathfinder campaign, years and years and years ago. And I think the biggest thing to think of when you think of Ashes of Creation versus a lot of other MMORPGs like Elder Scrolls Online, for example, is it is a true open world game. The world will evolve or decay based on the player choices. So we think about player agency, and player agency is essentially, for people who may not know what that really means, in an MMORPG, what that means, or agency means, is like it's the degree to which a character's actions, based on like your choices as the player, your decisions, and the game mechanics that are there, like these pillars I talked about, influence the game's progress. So the pillars that we talked about are like the game engine behind the game, and the player choices or decisions are basically what shape the world. So even though it's non-faction based, you'll have people that will create their own pseudo factions, right? And by pseudo factions, what I mean is they will form their alliances, meaningful alliances built around common goals and things that they're aligned to. I mean, there's religions in the game. There's so many layers to the lore in the game that I could spend like hours talking about. So I'm not going to do that. But so when we talk about some of the big differences, right, we kind of give you a snapshot of what Ashes is. Now, compared to the Elder Scrolls Online, you can queue for dungeons in the Elder Scrolls. You can queue for Cyrodiil. You can queue for a lot of things. And similar like World of Warcraft, you can queue for a lot of things as well, right? But Ashes of Creation really focuses on keeping you in the world, and that the world is your playground. Whereas, the world in the Elder Scrolls Online, it's a cutout for you to experience certain content. But in order to experience conflict and this war that happens between the three alliances, right? The Ebonheart Pact, the Daggerfall Covenant, and the Aldemary Dominion, this Ouroboros, as we see in their logo, right? The three alliances that are essentially fighting over the imperial throne. The difference is that you don't have factions in Ashes of Creation. In Ashes of Creation, the alliances are formed naturally between the players and their objectives and their agendas. And in the Elder Scrolls Online, you are limited in some of that. You've got to go if you want to go from one area on the map to another, you have to teleport, or you have to, you have to like run through the one zone to another through that loading screen real quick. And in Ashes, you don't have that. And so it's a true open world game. The only thing that they've even discussed being instanced is going to be potential arenas in the future. The other main thing to think about when you think about like big differences is if you're into PvE content, there are going to be like open world dungeons. I could talk about this forever. I'm going to try not to get into it too much, but think of raiding in the Elder Scrolls Online. You have limit to your rating. What is it, like 12 or 24? Sorry. Right, 24 is the cap for raids right now. If I'm not mistaken. Okay.
12.
Is it 12? Okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So 12. You have a 12-person trial group or raid group currently in the Elder Scrolls Online, and in Ashes of Creation, you can get up to 40. So it's the return of the 40-person raids. So they're bringing back that massive feeling you used to have. Like think about World of Warcraft back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
You had your 40-person raids. You went into this massive, raid to go in there, and also it's a game that's not going to have add-ons. So you're not going to have damage meters that are going to be in the game. You're not going to have add-ons to tell you things about what you're doing. It's going to be very much based on situational awareness and mechanics, and being able to communicate to resolve those threats in the game without the use of those other types of things. So it's a lot of the customization that's going to exist in the game is going to come with the game, and it's all about bringing that massive back. They don't have the intention of being a WoW killer or an ESO killer or anything like that. They just want to make a good game that you can live in that universe of theirs, which is super rich with lore, by the way. Gotten a lot of lore in the past several years, but with ESO and Ashes, the big comparison is it's a very different universe. I think the good with Ashes is the player agency element versus you don't really have that same level of player agency in ESO. But with Ashes of Creation, some of the bad is that the game's in development. The game does have issues in development right now because it's not a AAA studio, right? One of the things that works in ESO's favor, and probably also something that works against it, in my opinion, is that it is a AAA studio company that runs it. So you have a lot of things like in the cash shop that some people would consider a problem. And this is something that in Ashes of Creation they have committed against completely. So no pay to win. Not that the Elder Scrolls Online has pay to win. They have more pay to convenience elements, but Ashes of Creation has a very strict no pay to win element. Cosmetics in the cash shop, yes, but nothing that provides an advantage. They've been super hardcore about it for a long time. They want all the best things to be achievable and gained through in-game merit. So the best stuff will be in the game, whether that's crafting a legendary, getting a royal or legendary flying mount, which is only achievable, by the way, if you are a mayor of a node or a castle owner. And the thing is though is that Ashes of Creation's in development. It is not a AAA studio, so it's had its delays, and they're a smaller team, so they have when there's a problem, it can delay things, and I think delay things sometimes a little longer than you would see with like a AAA company that is putting an MMO out, because they just have the person power and the funds to just make sure that they push it along, get it done quicker. And Elder Scrolls Online's been around for a long time, so it's already got this thriving community. But I think a big difference though is that I go back to I'm not of this like tribalist camp that one game, one MMO, in order for it to succeed, the others have to suck and fail. And that's something that the CEO and creative director for Ashes also he also shares that same perspective. Like he doesn't have this perspective of like, you know, our MMO's got to be the one you play and all the others suck. And I think that's a very important piece to the foundational piece to the people, you know, to the person leading this company. As he kind of like rallies on other games that are doing well and that are succeeding and stuff. And, you know, the big difference though, I think, is that the universes are just so vastly different. But it's also a good thing because for both of the games, because they both have very rich lore, very dedicated, you know, communities, very, you know, thriving communities. Ashes, for being in development, has a very solid, thriving community. But yeah, when I think about the bad, I just think that with ESO, there's a lot of things that I do wish that weren't there. I wish that the cash shop wasn't as prevalent as it is. I wish that most of the best things you could get in the game were not in the like. You can get really amazing mounts, right? But you can't, like, if you compare what can be bought in the Elder Scrolls shop versus what you can gain and achieve in the game, the difference is drastic.
Right.
And that has been my biggest problem with ESO over the years. I, you know, also used to have a big problem with the game's foundation, like implementing systems that things they said they would never do. That were big problems for me. Like the one, you know, the one Tamriel, like making it to where you could see all the other people and different areas and all that, you know, something they said they wouldn't do. So those are the types of things that were bad for me. Now, some of those things that they've changed, I think were good. Like I think being able to you know, run around with my friends in the world and not be separated, regardless of their alliance, I think was probably a really good choice. Changes to the cash shop, though, for Elder Scrolls Online has been my biggest problem. So when they said they had the Endeavor system, I was, you know, pretty impressed that they decided to make that choice. I think it was something that is going to be so good for the game.
Can you elaborate on the Endeavor system to the best of your knowledge for people that don't know?
So basically, the stuff and things you do in the game allow you to collect these, you know, what are they called? Are they called scrolls, I think, in the game. And these are sort of like a currency, and these currency that you get from endeavors, or we could just say your endeavors are what you're endeavoring to do in the game. So as you're running around and you're doing all the different things, and by the way, it's pretty much anything you're doing in the game for the most part, you can gain these seals. And these seals or scrolls or whatever you want to call them, this currency from endeavors, you can then take and you can outright just get these items that are in crown crates, which currently you can only get through purchasing in one form or another. So most people, you know, either spend money and they purchase crown crates, and then they get these items they want, or they don't get it and they get crown gems. And the crown gems can be used in some cases to outright purchase items as well, but you're still talking about money unless you're somebody who trades your golds for crowns with other players in the game, which is pretty prominent. And a lot of people do it, and there's even a safe space for people to do that. I know Gina, Bruno, and the team monitor. I forget was it Tamriel? Oh my gosh, there's an oh my gosh, I forget the name of it. But anyway, there's a crown buying Discord and domain that you can go to that's observed by the devs, and you know, essentially they keep a watchful eye to keep people safe, which is like kudos to them for doing that.
Yeah, I think one of them is World Crown Exchange. That's the one that one of the ones I'm in.
I think that's it. Yeah, Crown Exchange one. Yeah,
WCE.
Yeah, but endeavors are your way to basically, through in-game merit, doing what you do every day, get stuff and things from those crates without having to spend your money. And that, to me, even though it's not the same thing as what I talked about wishing there was, is a nice diplomatic middle ground for what they currently have going on. I think that's really a positive and very healthy for the game from my perspective, just my opinion. I'd like to see more of that. I think the changes that they've been working on with the trying to resolve the issues with the servers and Cyrodiil and the champion trees is a long time coming. I really do want to like cheerlead them on, and I genuinely do hope that they find the resolution that's been plaguing the game for a long time. I genuinely hope that Endeavors helps to resolve that like problem that I have with the cash shop. That to me those are some of the things that have been the bad of ESO, more so than anything. They've been the things that have caused me to take breaks sometimes too, in the past. Just kind of feeling burned out by it. But again, I still love the Elder Scrolls Online and play it. But these are things I think that ESO has been doing lately that, like I'm just really happy to see that they're doing this.
Yeah, it does give you it does give you faith in the direction. Ness ESO, have you ever watched any of his content on on YouTube? Ness, Nes ESO. Anyways, he just did a video that said, is ESO pay to win? And I think it kind of depends on everybody's definition of pay to win, but he kind of pleaded his very interesting case to it. He's like, let's look at, you were talking about, you look at a rhythm, or you look at, you said it earlier, but what you're looking at is basically, an algorithm of, activity. And he said, let's look at ESO's algorithm, or let's look at ESO's rhythm here. But they introduce a paid chapter, and with that paid chapter comes these problematic proc sets and these extremely strong things. So obviously those are in fact behind a paywall.
Yes.
And then he said, and then they also introduce mythics, that you're only going to be able to get those mythics like Gaza Sithis and stuff if you have access to that area. You'll probably have to scry it in that area. And he goes, so that in essence is in fact pay to win if you want the strongest mythics and the strongest gear. And to compound the belief that it's pay to win, he says all the sets and all the things that were problematic previous to that were released from the last paid chapter, that were hidden behind a paywall or whatever, those things are now getting nerfed, and it's like a hey, we're finally going to get around to taking care of Malakath for you guys, congratulations. And it's just in time to nerf the old sets and push people into the new sets, is basically, and I was like, he's not wrong. But then I go and I read the description, or I read the comments, and a lot of the people are like, that's not pay to win, and so it kind of makes me wonder what everyone's definition of pay to win is like, if the only way that you're going to get the strongest PvP sets, or the new problematic proc sets and the new whatever, is if you have to pay to get those. That sounds like a successful business model. Number one, I don't want to knock them on that, but it also is pay to win. And they're nerfing the old sets, which makes you want to seek out the next new thing. What's my pivot? Well, my pivot needs to be to the next new powerful thing. What's going to be now meta? So what's your thoughts on all that?
Oh man, I wasn't sure if I was going to hit on this. It's like,
here we are.
When you ask, oh man, you're asking me the question, man. I'm gonna give you I'm gonna give you my honest answer.
Honesty is the best policy.
It's the only way I roll, homie. So I mean, I don't sugarcoat it. If somebody wants the honest truth from me and what I think, I'm gonna tell you. And here's the thing. So I think a lot of people these days they have a very rigid perspective. So what's the classic definition of pay to win in an MMORPG or a game? Buying something outright in a store that is the strongest thing in the game. So you can only win or be the most successful if you have this item that you can only buy. That's the really rigid term. Now, I think a more loose, more, in my opinion, respectable term of pay to win is something that can be purchased to give a person an in-game advantage over somebody else in a cutout of content that they consider their focal point. So if your focal point is, I love to collect mounts, okay, and I want to be a mount collector, and in order for me to get all the mounts, I have to buy them, then I cannot be as successful as the next person if I don't have as much money. I mean, that's the long and short of it. If my competitive thing is to be a mount collector, and somebody who has more money than I do can go buy them all in the shop whenever they're available and I can't, then they're winning and I'm not. The same could be said for if I'm a crafter and the person can buy these motifs in the shop and I can't afford it and they can get it before me. Then I consider that. That's what I'm saying. So like these are my versions of pay to win. Anything that gives you an advantage over somebody else, or it's not strictly based on merit. Now that's just my working belief. Now I would agree with what Ness is saying, that I also I understand both sides. Okay, I understand how the strict term of pay to win for somebody is you can't buy this thing directly from the shop, so it's not okay, fair. But I also think that's a bit rigid and a little outdated because the way that business practices have evolved and changed over time doesn't fit that strict adherence to this guideline of, well, if it's not just an item in the shop, it doesn't count. I don't agree with that. I believe that if someone's in game is mount collecting or pet collecting or crafting or whatever, and someone can go buy and get the significant edge, like this big fiasco that happened with New World recently, right? They were testing their things in their shop and it got leaked. They were testing it in game store, right? And what was it that people were all up in arms about? Well, they say in two sentences, one says we want to ensure that there is a competitive environment. The other sentence says we are thinking about giving skill boosters to trade skill boosters and experience boosters to players. Okay, well, it may not be an item, but is that pay to win? Well, if a game launches and that's in there, absolutely, in my mind, because that means somebody can get from point A to B quicker than the other because they had the money. I also think with Elder Scrolls, when Ness talked about expansions, yeah, it totally happens. I think it's a good business model because it makes them a lot of money. I don't really think it's respectable to the players, though, or respectful to the players, in my opinion. Now, I don't think that that's necessarily, this isn't, and I think it's also very important when I say this, that when we see the developers like Gina and Rich and all of them, like this isn't them, man. Okay. Like this is the higher ups that decide the business model. Mm-hmm. These are the people that are on that board, that corporate perspective. These aren't the developers, man. And I think it's important to point that out too, because I think a lot of times when we see these things happen, people do get upset. They direct that towards them. And I don't really feel like that's very fair because that's not, if you don't want to, if you want to, use your dollar, right? Use your dollar if you want things to change. That's the thing we always come back to.
Yeah.
I saw
that video from him and I was like, I've been feeling that way lately with ESO. And I recognize the sustainable business model. Like I see what they're doing and I understand it, but then there's also that whole side of it. But is it right? And so
I don't agree with it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, because like you get the necromancer blowing stuff up, man. If you don't got the necromancer in PvP, you can get kind of dumped on by him, man. Like,
yeah, that's the other thing too, was the classes, so warden and necromancer, when their kits had, they had impressive kits. And when we talked to Dots Gaming, who was there, actually traveled and tested before launch and was telling us about the necromancer and the warden, pre-launch for them and how strong they were. Both Deltia and Dots both expressed their concerns for those classes being launched. Even Deltia today, if you were to jump on one of his streams earlier, like when they were launched, he would tell you that he wasn't happy about wardens and necromancers and how strong they were, and it is shameful to the consumer that's currently playing the game when you're going to release something like that behind a wall. And I see it. I don't know, but I don't know. I think they need to watch that very, very carefully because they're walking a very thin line right now between being pay to win and not, from a PvP standpoint. And if you don't want to have anything to do with PvP, like if you want to kill your PvP game, your competitive PvP game, you'll continue down the path where they're at right now. And what'll happen is the competitive PvP game will be like, look, you can't be meta, you can't be mid-max in this game, you can't be whatever without purchasing the next new thing. You just can't. Therefore it's pay to win. So, and as soon as they get that tag or that they're dubbed that, it's going to be tragic for that side of the game. And so I don't know.
Yeah, I do agree with that, though. I mean, it sucks, but I do unfortunately agree with what they're saying.
I feel like I have mixed feelings about it, just because I'm just trying to like think without actually looking it up, but like how many, like what in terms of the player base, how many people have ESO Plus and how many who don't? Because I would like to think majority of people have it, because I know when I first started playing the game in 2019, I played the game for 3 days, realized I liked it, and also I couldn't really do much because I needed the craft bag, so I signed
Yeah.
up for ESO Plus. And with ESO Plus, you get all the content minus the last the last DLC or
Expansion.
patch, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to me, having like being an ESO Plus member, I don't have any complaints, because like I will, if say they're like everything in Blackwood comes out, right, and then I don't have access to this overpowered gear for 3 months or whatever until the next quarter when the next thing drops. I mean, that's fine. I'm going to get it eventually. So,
Yeah.
but
So
I'm speaking from somebody who's already in as a subscriber, who's already technically paying. And
exactly.
in my opinion,
Yep.
if you're a subscriber, then let me rethink this. I can't imagine I can't imagine playing ESO and not paying for it, because
Yeah.
you kind of can't just with the forget everything else. The craft bag alone is reason enough for me to purchase ESO, or to be a subscriber, if you
Yeah.
would. And then with that, you get everything else. So then when we discuss things like, oh, it's pay to win, I mean, we're already paying for the game. We're already going to have these things, so we're technically all on the same page. And then when we're talking about people who don't are not ESO Plus members, I don't even know how you can even play the game without it. It's
Oh
very
man.
difficult. It's very, very difficult. But then
So
they make it like that, so you do pay, which
yeah.
to me seems fine, because they need to make money doing something. So
Oh
Yeah.
man. I was
So
going to say about Ashes. Like, this is a good segue into what's different about Ashes. This is a good example. So the monetization model. Get ready for this. This is going to be a big shift for what we're all used to. Like, I'm pretty much of the mind I'll buy the game and its expansions and I'll pay a sub model. That's always my preference. Ashes of Creation does not have a box cost, right? You can get in and support the game. You could have kickstarted it and all this stuff, but you're not buying the game. The game doesn't have box cost, which means the game and the expansions will never actually cost you money. You just pay a subscription model, and there's a shop, and the shop is no pay to win. So it's just cosmetics, right? But even those cosmetics aren't the best stuff in the game. The best stuff in the game comes from in-game crafting and achievement, right?
yeah, and that seems, we paid for the game. We're paying for the expansions. We're paying for, items from the cash shop and Crown. So I get it. Like, their sustainable business model, you see all these separate things that we're paying for. But you were right, Icy. We're already on the paying side, right? Because trying to do it without paying, it would be brutal or next to impossible. If you play this game for any amount of time, you run into inventory problems,
easily
and
within just a couple days.
within a couple days. So they've already got you there. But then if you're going to play for any amount of time and do PvP and try to be competitive, imagine those people that don't get access. They're not an ESO. ESO Plus is pay. They're paying now. They're now a paying member, right? Outside of just paying for the game itself. Okay, they bought the game. They own the game, but they're not going to do ESO Plus, and they're not going to do Crown Store, and they're not going to do that stuff, and they want to be competitive. From an inventory, just a front end and back end, it's so hard to exist in this game. And so, and what is it? How long until, if you're not an ESO Plus member, people won't have access to Blackwood until when? Ever?
So I think, because what's the current DLC, like Flames of Ambition?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think once Blackwood drops, then everybody who's in ESO Plus, if they don't purchase Blackwood, then they'll have automatic access to like anything that they were missing part of Flames of Ambition. So then the next DLC after Blackwood, if you didn't purchase it, it would then be a part of your membership.
Yeah. So what's the next one? How long are we talking? 3 months, 6 months?
I guess they do like what every quarter, so
Yeah,
4
quarterly.
type patches every year. So
4 months.
yeah, June, so September or something like that around there.
Yeah, so everyone else is running around with Gaze's Sisyphus until then, or everyone else is running around with, some of these new craftable sets and new proc sets and stuff for that duration. That's going to be a really rough 4 months. You're having to deal with inventory issues and, fight at a disadvantage. And so it's interesting, the debacle or the pinch that it puts you in. I have ESO Plus because of the inventory issues and stuff like that as well, but and crafting and creating gear for the builds and stuff. But yeah, it was an interesting video to watch, and I really don't want them to go any further than where they're at right now as far as the pay to win type scenario. I get it, I understand it. Doesn't mean that we need to
Yeah.
like it.
Yeah.
like it.
So Simurgh, you said that Ashes of Creation, it'll have your initial base cost, right, to purchase the game, and then it'll be subscription after that. So
No box cost. You don't pay for the game.
Okay.
So you
Just
could
subscription straight out.
you literally, this is the thing that like people are like, wait, what? And I'm like, yes, okay. So you could literally wait till this game launches, go, I'm gonna play the game, subscribe for the $14.99 or whatever, right? Subscribe for the first month, play it as much as you like, and imagine you don't like it and you go, this isn't the game for me. You just don't resub. So you're out $14.99, right? Versus somebody who's like, I had to spend like $60 in the game plus a sub, plus maybe I had to do this or that. So the bar to entry is minimal. So all the people that are purchasing stuff now, they're getting pre-order packs, and it's basically game time, cosmetics, the name reservations, maybe stuff like that. You know what I mean? For like when the game launches, in-game or the cash shop currency embers, you can get those things, but you don't get the game. You don't have to buy the game. You can get an access. Some people are in because they want to stream it, they want to showcase it, they want to play it, they want to test it, they want in early. So there's an opportunity for people to do that, but they're not actually paying for the game because the game itself doesn't actually cost anything. Just a subscription to play, which is a very different model than we're used to. But I think that it's going to have a lot of positives. But there's also some things I think in terms of that I'm a little concerned about long term. But it's a different story.
So I do like that, like just pure subscription stuff. But I feel like it's not that different. It's just it's literally just like, because a lot of other games have subscription models, but this one is just purely subscription. And it sounds like I think the main guy, his name is Steven, right? Yeah, I think I mean, I don't want to say nothing wrong or anything, but like if he just stays true to his word and stuff, then I mean, I'm considering freaking jumping ship over,
That sort of rocks the boat when you think about it too, because I mean, he's a multimillionaire, right? Retired before he was 30. I mean, accumulated his wealth and decided that, what I want to do is I want to build he was tired of playing. He's an avid MMORPG gamer, right? There's videos of him playing and he gets into RP mode. You should hear this guy. Like we did a Castle Siege test the other night that they shared on their live stream yesterday. Totally was in that video. It's awesome. Virtue for the win. It's my guild, by the way, baby. And we were like running around, and Steven's like, and this guy like lives and breathes this. Okay, like he was exhausted. He had been like, he got up like 4:30 that morning, and here we are like midnight, and the guy hasn't slept, and he's exhausted, and he's recording. I mean, he puts it all into this, and he pulled us together, and you should have heard him just RPing and nerding out. You go check it out on there, like YouTube. I mean, this guy is as true of a gamer as it gets. The reason that I love this is like, has anybody listening to this podcast, like, or you guys here, have you ever had an experience where you were playing a game and you just kind of felt really jaded and you thought to yourself, like, what if one day someone who had just had a lot of money, who didn't have to answer to a board, could just make a really good game, like make an MMORPG that was just really good? Like, how cool that would be. This is that needle in a haystack scenario. It actually happened.
Yeah, Icy and I even talked about that. You remember that, Icy? You're like, what if we
Mhm.
just made a game?
Yeah, and I feel like we kind of could.
Yeah.
I feel like we could because Grim's got that the like sexy charisma voice, you know. So I think he could definitely make some pitches and you know sway some nice financial support. But then I guess we fall into the trap of, well, you know, like all the other companies and stuff, right? Like
Mhm.
you have your you have your developers and everything, but then you got to
Mhm.
meet numbers, you got to impress your investors and stuff, and then we would eventually, I guess, fall into the trap of everybody else. But with Steve's case, he is the sole
So
investor for the most
he's the
part.
Yep.
So
wallet. Yeah, he's
yeah,
the
Yep.
wallet.
he could do whatever he wants. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's
he
interesting.
is. Yeah, and he's super down to earth, you know, pretty cool guy, man. He's just another gamer. I've met him in San Diego like a couple years back, and you know, I've had the opportunity to chat with him and, you know, to get to know him a little bit and to have him on the on a podcast and everything. And you know, and he'll jump in, like he'll literally just jump in Discord, you know, with people in the community that are just hanging out, and he'll jump in and chat with them. He's very connected to the community, and sometimes they even say probably a little too connected, because he just like he really does, like, you know, genuinely want to deliver on a game people are proud of, but he's also not willing to, you know, deviate from the vision any more than is necessary, because it's, you know, they still have their plan and still this universe to bring to us. So
That's so
yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, so in ESO world, we do have Blackwood
Mhm.
right around the
Yeah.
corner. What are you looking forward to, Blackwood?
Oh my god, I want to go jump in those portals like all day, dude. I want to go in those portals and go kill some baddies all day, man. I am like stoked. I'm stoked about the aesthetic, man. I just like the environment to just chill in there, surrounded by all the lava and fire and flames and stuff, man. Like, I mean, it's gonna hit the nostalgia hardcore, dude. I mean, you know, my brother, he loved Morrowind. You know, for him it was Morrowind. You know, for me it's Oblivion. I mean, you want to call it nostalgia bait or not? I mean, I can't help it, man. I want to see a uh I want to see it, man. I want to go back in there and see it with a big facelift. I can't help it. I just want to see it. It's going to be so much fun. I think I'm also really excited about the companion and the Endeavor systems. I know Endeavors are pushed back a bit, which is a shame. But I think that these things are going to be great. I mean, Star Wars: The Old Republic, I played that for a while, specifically it launched, and loved it. The companions in that game were a lot of fun. Um, Having them there to kind of help you fight. I love the idea that you're going to be able to theorycraft a little bit with their builds and stuff. That's going to be sick. I think that's really great. The misses, I don't know, man. The pros and cons here, the hits and misses. I don't really know too much where I would stand on Blackwood yet. I think I'm gonna have to see it launch to really give it. To give it a fair assessment. I'm hoping that the Endeavor system is. I think I'm just really hoping that the Endeavor system really delivers. I hope that they aren't skimpy with it. I'm a proponent that if people love your game, they're going to spend their money. And I think that this is a good way to reward people that have been dedicated and spent a lot of their money in the cash shop over the years, that can now, maybe through the stuff they're already doing, earn this freely. But I think I'm overall just looking forward to the story too. I think that it could be really good. I'm hoping, and this is just something I'm a little concerned of. I've been concerned of lately, is like I just hope that, like, the past couple years they've done great with the like year-long stuff that they've been doing with the stories. It's super cool. It's something that Ashes is definitely planning on doing as well. I think that any MMO that does that is like just rocking it. I think it's great content delivery, story delivery. I mean, hitting all the different markers. And they've done really good with it. I just hope that nothing is rushed. And I think with the state of the world as it's been for a while, it's definitely a tricky scenario. So I'm just hoping that they don't like miss too many markers or anything and get to a place where they rush things out or you know, push things too quickly, especially when it comes to systems like the companion system, sets and stuff like that come out. I think I'm overall like, am I looking forward to new sets? Yes. I'm also kind of like burned out by how many sets are in the game. Yes. I think that's the ESO grind though, is the sets, getting all the sets and grinding for the sets. Yeah.
But
I'm excited for the story.
You do have a lot of variety though.
You do have a ton of variety, tons, and that was one of the things in the very beginning that I've loved about this game. I think maybe we're not even talking about this, but I think I hope to see them make more skill trees more meaningful again. One of the things I loved about the Elder Scrolls Online was the possibility as a theory crafter for so many things. Now the sets provided great, and we may talk about this a little more, but the sets provide a lot of variety. It's also like, holy hell, man. Like these guys balancing that much, that is a task, man. That is a task. I do not envy them at all. I can only imagine how much work goes into balancing all the sets, all the gear, like all the different like mythic items or the skill lines and stuff. I do wish that more of the skill lines were more meaningful and useful. That's the one bummer I've got when it comes to it all.
Can you give us an example of what you mean by that? Like at least like one like concrete thing that we could like relate to.
Yeah, I feel like, like look at the guild lines, right? The Fighters Guild and the Mages Guild. I think that there are a few selected ones like Dawnbreaker, Meteor as the ultimates maybe. Entropy is a good one from the Mages line that's good. But the Volcanic Rune, I mean, it does damage, but like there are times over the course of, the game's history, or even like the Mage Light, where like some of these things just didn't really feel like they impact enough compared to sets or compared to other abilities that might have just gotten changed. I think that a lot of the skills specifically the class skills having a stamina or magicka cost morphs and different sides that people can choose versus like the way they were at launch is like a really great addition. But I think like just some of the skill lines, like some of the I think they've been doing a good job at this though. I think over the years they've progressively gone and started to make more of these skills and like the Undaunted lines and things of that nature more useful where they didn't used to be. And I definitely see a lot of that, more of that, like the orbs for healers, right? That can be dished out now. And it's kind of a bread and butter consideration for a lot of healing for like trials and stuff like that.
And along the lines of what you're talking, a real easy one. This is a low hanging fruit right here, but it's the whip. We've got 2 magicka versions of the whip for DKs. Why is there no stam whip? And so they really need to go through the base ability can be magicka, that's fine, but when you morph it, of every ability there should be a stamina version that does something, and then there should be a magicka version. And with whip we've got 2 different magicka versions, and so that would be one of the things that I would first come to mind when we're talking about let's finally bring some continuity to skill lines. So I
definitely agree with that too. I mean, I don't know. Like, I don't know if the Sun Shield's even used that much anymore for the Templar. Like, I used to love using my Blazing Shield, but I think it just doesn't perform as well as it used to. Could be wrong. I haven't been able to use it in a while. It's just these small things, but it's just, I think that there were points in the past where some of these felt really useful, and now they just don't. They just don't.
Is Blazing Shield kind of like the mullet? I hear mullets are coming back in. Like that's the hairstyle that guys are. I just heard this on the radio and I thought that was funny. Yeah, mullets are coming back in. So prepare yourselves for a mullet invasion. But so does ESO kind of work cyclical like that? Like Blazing Shield was the thing. It was the mullet at that time, and people were rocking it, and then you kind of gravitate away from it, and then it's going to come back around. Do you think it might be it's the mullet?
I do think that things are cyclical. Like I do think that they kind of like bolster certain skills, push them forward for a while, and then they kind of move on to the next one. I think Blazing Shield was a really, really good example. The Radiant Ward, though, like that one, the other morph of that ability specifically, it just is never felt. It's just never felt super strong or meaningful to me. Blazing Shield was the only way to go. And I think just it's a good example of like how some skills, and these are just class skills too. If you go to like some of the other ones, looking at like the Alliance War, and you go to like, like you go to Assault, Caltrops have been bumped up a bit. I actually can use the Razor Caltrops, but they used to be kind of like pretty, like meh. They weren't really all that amazing. Yeah. I'm a little sad that they took the Emperor passives away. I'm not gonna lie. I worked hard for those.
Yeah. Looking forward, our next topic is proc sets and balancing, but I want to tie that into misses for Blackwood, not to be super negative or whatever, but honesty is the best policy. And a lot of other content creators were posting on it too, but it would have took a day of testing on their own to know that the proposed changes that they were looking at doing for proc sets for in a PvP atmosphere was not going to be received well. And they didn't do that, so like we've got some crazy high tooltips and really scary things, and everybody right now is saying get ready for apocalypse. Get ready for apocalypse because of the way things are scaling right now. And even though they bumped the threshold for requirement for weapon damage and the threshold for spell damage or whatever, and then there's a big discrepancy in how it's easier to stack weapon damage than it is spell damage, and it's because of that medium armor passive, the agility passive or whatever. Like, why don't we have an arcane passive or something to that effect that does similar in the light armor? And then another weird thing is, so if you're wearing light armor, you're already at a disadvantage from a resistance standpoint. You're going to take more damage wearing light armor, and then to add to it, in the PvP realm, something like 70-80% of PvPers are stamina classes because it's the dominant, because of the way it works. Like, oh, I just stack weapon damage as a stamina character, and it also buffs my vigor heals, Yeah, so might as well be stamina. And you take the fact, it's a common fact, you take that most people in the PvP environment are running as a stamina class, and now you go and look at the passives or detractors to wearing light armor, you're already at a resistance negative. You're operating with less base resistances. And you also take more physical or martial damage too on top of that. And it's like, are you trying to detract anyone from wearing light armor? I don't get, like we needed to think about some of these things and how they apply to the PvP atmosphere. So, and yet here they are, and I go on to the PTS, and like we went through this whole scenario where we got rid of proc sets in ESO, because they were recognized as problematic, and we're going to test some things and this, that, and the other. And then Blackwood's rolling up, and I can get a 60k tooltip on Explosive Rebuke. Why can I get a 60k tooltip on Explosive Rebuke? Like, that's going to hit a player for 30k. Does that seem right? Like, no. And so we see these things, and I just don't understand. I'm not trying to point fingers at I don't know whoever's calling the shots or doing that, but there's balancing's always going to be a thing, but some of these things are free throws. They should, or layups, like bare minimum, we should understand what, by adding on our armor sets saying this ability scales off of spell damage and weapon damage. If it's a Magicka set, it shouldn't say this ability scales off weapon damage, because it's easier to scale weapon damage than it is spell damage. And so you could run around with a 36k tooltip on a Stam Crow and have Vicious Death, and have a 36k tooltip on your Vicious Death. Why is that a thing? And it's because that last word, or the last part of it, scales off your spell damage or weapon damage. Get rid of or weapon damage. It's a magic set. It shouldn't say or weapon damage. And if a stamina class wants to wear that set just to get the 5-piece out of it, that's fine. But the tooltip should scale off their spell damage because it's a magicka set. And so there's simple math, right? I don't know. And I'm always I don't know about PvE world or anything like that. I'm just speaking from a PvP world and trying to have a healthy PvP environment. But I see things like that, and that's my biggest fear for Blackwood. And everyone that I talk to, they're like, I'm going to jump into Blackwood and we're going to see what it's about. But I just think damage is going to be astronomical. Everyone's going to be running around with nuclear capabilities, and it's going to be unavoidable cheese, and who wants to play a game like that when skill is completely thrown out the window? So, not to rant or sound super negative, I'm just stating the facts here. So
no, I mean, I definitely understand that perspective, and I would tend to agree as well. I mean, I think stamina, I also think there's another layer to this that is a problematic scenario for me, and it's that as stamina, builds have just been bolstered. You said it yourself, right? Like that the majority of the population in PvP are stamina based, right? So when you got that being your majority, and I think, and this is just my speculation, my thoughts here, when you look to the future and you look at this board of directors that sits there around a table dictating how they're going to make money, they're going, well, this is our majority, so let's give them what they want. Let's make them stronger. Let's give their gameplay more. Let's bolster them. I think that, right? And stamina, I mean, I feel like it also takes away from that dynamic that I enjoy a lot of, which is really needing a healer in situations. And the fact that you as a stamina build can like basically heal and you don't need a healer kind of just doesn't work for me. I actually like that. Like maybe I need to take a healer into like an arena or something around the battleground. Maybe I actually need a healer. Maybe a healer can be really good to have in my group. And of course you can use those in Cyrodiil and stuff like that. And of course they're still beneficial, but it's not really required that someone who's straight up damaged could really need a healer.
Yeah. And see, I think that's a big detractor. Like Icy is at his heart, at his nature, a support. He runs amazing PvP healers and builds like that. You can't heal dead,
Right.
like, and when these people are getting a 30k explosive rebuke dropped on them, and even if Icy's in their group, Icy's not going to be able to save them or heal through that, and that's a one-shot mechanic from a gear set. And so what I proposed is that they attach these proc sets. If it's a set that does damage or does healing, it has a little symbol attached to it. The armor sets from backdated and moving forward. So every time, whatever the next patch is that comes out 3 months from now, any set that does damage in the 5-piece or does healing, it has a little symbol on it, and that little symbol connects it to the battle spirit passive. And then they can throttle it from there, and they can say sets that have this symbol do 10% less damage or healing, or 20%. And they just check in with the PvP community and say, as an example, how do these sets feel right now? Crimson, how does Crimson feel right now? And if they say, well, Crimson still hits hard, or the heal is stupid, or whatever it is, they can say, hey, we're going to take it from 10% to 15% and keep us posted on that. And they can start to hone in on it. And if they follow these same mathematical equations for total damage output or total healing received from sets, like there's a ceiling on it, we're never going to release sets that will exceed this damage amount or exceed this healing amount. Then that throttle through battle spirit passive becomes easier to control all those problematic sets. And in that moment, they never piss off their PvE community. Release the most broken sets you want. Do whatever you want to transition everybody to the next great thing, in purchasing. I'm not really saying that because I know even PvE community would get mad about that, but you can release that stuff and know that it's not going to cause major balancing issues as long as it's properly tagged, in PvE. Now, another thing too, Sinful Duck left a comment on one of our videos about, because we were talking about like things like the Vatashran staff, Destro staff. Here's an ability that's free to cast. A lot of people run with it because it applies Major Breach or Magic Steel or whatever morph you're going with. Well, with the Vat staff now, it also applies a dot, and it just so happens that dot is very powerful. So powerful that even stamina classes are running with it on their back bar in PvP. You'll see a stam necromancer running around with a two-hander on the front bar and the Destro Vatashran staff on the back bar because the dot is so juicy. And to make things even worse is that dot can be stacked on a target. Multiple people, if I were running around and you and Icy and your entire guild that you run with were running around, you were all backbarring that, every single one of you could put that exact same dot on me. And there's no counterplay to it. And so that's the other thing is the sets that are potentially problematic or the weapons that are going to do free damage or whatever, you need to look at those as debuffs, unique debuffs that can't be stacked. And Sinful said, I don't really see that we'll ever get there. Let's be realistic that, but I think we can if we talk about it and we recognize it as a problem, and say we shouldn't be able to stack these free damage or proc set weapons or, whatever. I'm not saying that all three of us, you, me, and Icy, couldn't run around with explosive rebuke on and not all be able to land that shot. That's kind of different. But I don't know what the answer is for some of the things, but the majority of the problems, I think that's what you do. You cut out the majority of the problems and then you go through and get the outliers, the ones that weren't resolved through that. And the majority of the problems would be solved by attaching sets that do damage or healing to the Battle Spirit passive and apply a throttle and get rid of, if it's a Magicka based stat, get rid of spell damage and weapon damage, because weapon damage can be scaled more easily, and they already raise the ceiling on weapon damage scaling. So if it is a stamina, whatever it is, because they raise the ceiling on the weapon damage, hopefully the tooltip isn't too obnoxious. But those are my things, continuing to rant about Blackwood. But what's your thoughts on proc sets and the no proc set testing that was going on in Cyrodiil and stuff? Did you get a lot of time to PvP?
Yeah, I did check it out. I did go in there a few times with some friends, and I went in there and kind of ran around and stuff, and kind of did some builds around no proc sets. Just kind of got some sets that gave me some good bonuses to stats and mitigation and things like that. Like my resource pools, attributes and stuff. And I mean, I actually preferred the PvP a lot more like that. If I'm being honest, I've always been a proponent. Like, while I do like Icy said, like there's a lot of variety with the sets, and I totally agree with that. I think that the approach for me that would make more sense and be better, my better, is that these sets are more supplemental and less impactful in regard to like them being what determines a lot of wins or losses. Like, I think supplemental damage or supplemental attributes to your stats is great, even with proc sets, but having and even these like creatures that pop up and run after somebody, hey, it's totally cool, it looks awesome, right? But I don't think it should do a crazy amount of damage. I think that takes away from the skill of a player, and it relies more on this random roll of the dice that could determine a fight. So if you're just like mashing a button, literally people can run around and mash one button to proc sets, and their proc sets will destroy people. Like, to me, that's not skill. That's just having sets and pressing a button to get it to go and running around until it can go. I mean, you got people that can do that, and if you get the two people in the same cutout and you don't have proc sets, like, well, who would win?
Yeah. the person that's used to stat-based builds and used to managing their buffs and doing their own damage, that should be the person. Because if you took the proc sets away from the other person, I actually released a video not too long ago covering this and talking about the skill gap. It's called Own Your Battlegrounds episode 4.
Okay.
But that's a really good point that you just said is, a lot of people are carried by proc sets and they don't realize that they're carried by proc sets. They just jump into proc sets because that's what they know is meta. Like if you look at the upper MMR, top tier MMR, Deltia, Dots, all of the biggest content creators will tell you that the highest MMR, I know this to be true when I was there, but the highest MMR is all proc set users, high skill set proc set users for the most part. And the only ones that are not are the random people that more so like skill-based PvP, and they're going with stat-based and they're operating at a disadvantage. Like Dots was like, I'm running around in high MMR facing everyone here has nuclear capabilities, with a push of one button. He's like, if I don't play it perfectly, I get killed. And so that's frustrating. We're going to embrace that, going into Blackwood, though. I'm going to put together the most broken stuff. I had said that we were going to do this before, and we always kind of gravitate away from it, but
do it, showcase it. Yeah,
we're going to showcase it. And because I've been running around on stat-based builds and, doing 20-1 or 20-0 or 40-0. What do you think's going to happen when we put proc on? Like the time to kill is going to speed up, and the effort to kill is going to be easier. I only have to press one button to kill these people now. So let's see what we can do. I'm going to try and get 100 and no BG.
Dude.
So
I'm gonna like toot on the ashes here. One of the reasons that I actually am looking forward to the combat in that game is the fact there's no stun locking. It's not going to be a thing in the game. Like it's going to focus more around resource management, cooldowns, situational awareness, the things that I used to enjoy. And that's something that was there a lot more when ESO, when the game launched, and since we've deviated away from that. And now you got like the sets that just proc like this. And it's like, dude, I like the fights that, I'm gonna nerd a little bit here. I love a good, like, I don't care if I win or lose. I was playing Smite last night with my fiance, right? And we were playing
Smite.
Dude, we were playing this game and we were up against just me and her and some randoms, right? We were in there and we were running through and we were playing, and we were literally like 9 and 10 points right to the end there, and we lost. And it felt so good to lose in that situation because it was such a close game. It felt so competitive, and you knew that it was going to come down to who made the most mistakes. And in a fight in PvP, when I'm fighting somebody or a group of people, that I thrive on that, man. Like knowing that if I'm fighting somebody one-on-one even, and we're going back and forth, and to know that who wins, because you're both, I had this in SWOTOR, right? We go into those Battlegrounds of SWOTOR, and I remember fighting somebody, and it was always this one guy, right? Inquisitor Sith, that I would always fight against. But we would actually chat and stuff. Like I had this guy as a friend. It was so cool, dude. I would fight him, and I knew when I fought him, when I found him in there, like it was me or him, and it was going to be determined by who messed up, who didn't watch their cooldown, who missed an opportunity, who didn't watch their resources, like who paid attention and was on their A game. And it was super respectful, man. Like I would catch this guy and just chat with him you shouldn't do this in a battleground, by the way, but we would go off to the side. We would just chat for a little bit sometimes. And it was like super fun, man. Like I loved it. And like when you have things like stun locking and proc sets and things like that, it just, for me, takes away from the joy of the experience. And those fights a while, not for long, but a fight that can go on, and knowing that who wins is the person who is on their A game. It's just such a good feeling, win or lose, knowing that you have a fight that close for me.
Yes. Dot said this about high MMR and upper tier Battlegrounds. He said it literally comes down to who has the most proc sets. That's what it comes down to. And that's not a healthy, but the answer to that is the Battle Spirit passive throttle on proc sets.
I agree.
If they apply that, it will help that situation. Now you can wear proc sets. You can run the same loadout that you've been running. It's just going to do less damage and require a little bit more skill.
Yeah, counter to the problem.
Counter to the problem. And so I really hope that they hear this and they think about it and they implement it. So, and you know what? Here's another thing too, just as a side note. A lot of people, I've had this before, they'll say, you sound very disenfranchised or very turned off by ESO, maybe you need a break or whatever. By nature, my outside job is I'm a coach, and the coach is the person that always tells the athlete what they don't want to hear. They tell them exactly what needs to be done to be successful, right? And by nature, that's me. When I'm saying these things, I'm not saying them to try and disenfranchise everybody else or make everybody else. I'm not trying to be a negative Nancy. I'm trying to be, real. And they really need to implement this because it really is a problem. And
I mean, I also think that, like, I just want to say something to that. I've actually had this perspective from people too. Like, they might hear what I'm saying going, oh, like, it's easy to think that, like, oh, he just wants us to play Ashes. No, I'm just giving you differences. Like, I love the Elder Scrolls. I am passionate about MMORPGs, and I'm passionate about both the Elder Scrolls and Ashes of Creation. And I'm giving the information on both. Like, I think when I hear what you're saying and I hear what I'm saying, what Icy's saying, like, I just hear three guys that are passionate about the game and would love to see it thrive and do better. That's where it comes from, man.
That it breaks my heart when I see these things happening in PvP and the lack of performance and the lack of balance and the big misses. It breaks my heart, and that's why I say the things. And realistically, if we ever get to the point where we hit a wall and I'm like, this game is never going to be what it could be or what it should be because they're not driving the bus in the proper direction, I'm gone. If I ever feel that way, I'm gone, and so I'm keeping just a very close eye on things like that, and we'll just kind of go from there. But if they were to just heed our call, and listen to some of these things and take the negative feedback or take the constructive criticism is what I'd like to say, and look at it and say, you know what, they've got a point here. Let's look at this. What would it look like? Because Deltia said this. He was like, ZOS is full of like super smart people.
Yeah.
If it were as simple as attaching a battle spirit throttle to these things, don't you think they would have implemented that?
Absolutely.
And I'm like,
I agree.
I would think. So what's the holdup? Why have they not done that?
Yeah.
So
I don't think it's the developers, man. That's my 2 cents. I think that, developers have, that's why I always say, like, be kind, man, to the developers, man. Because like they work for somebody.
Right.
And I really, I mean, I've seen a lot of changes though in the past like year, man. Like, they've definitely been implementing some things that I'm like, I could definitely stand beside that weren't there before. And I do say that wholeheartedly. And I would love, look, I'm still going to play the Elder Scrolls Online. Like, I'm not going to lie to myself. Like, I know me. I'll always play this game until it's gone. I know I will, but I know I would also play it more and be even more excited about it if some of these things were resolved. And to be fair, they've been there for a while. And I would just love to see I'd love to see this game thrive even more than it is now. It could be so much bigger and better. It really could be. I believe that.
Yeah, I agree. So all my passion and all my everything comes from a PvP standpoint. So that's what really gets me going is some of those misses on that. But and performance is one of my biggest things. Earlier today, I see a lot of weird performance things, not being able to bar swap and use abilities and this, that, and the other. And it's
Same.
super frustrating. And is there an answer to that? Like, are the new servers going to be the answer to that with, Microsoft purchasing? Or I think I saw a post where Gina said that that's not going to solve, some of the problems. So
Yeah, it's code. I think really what it comes down to is like that code.
yeah, code degradation, I think is what it's referred to as. Is the game's been out for 7 years and the code's it degrades over time, and every time we are adding new things, the next new big thing, and not addressing, the code. So I don't know. That's probably my biggest performance or performance is a major concern of mine. But I'll go through a battleground and I'll be 20-2, and my 2 deaths were lag,
Good bar swap or something.
bar swap or lag, and I'll be complaining up a storm when it happens, like, can't bar swap in this damn game. And then I go back, the game's over and I'm like, well, I'm 20-2 and I'm crying about being 20-2, so I have to take performance in stride and just continue to remind myself that we do enjoy the overall experience. It's those moments that should be not an issue because of performance, but they are. So
yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that's one of the things that I have issues with too, is like I'll be sitting there in a fight and I'm like hitting the buttons. It's like, hello?
Yeah. Dawnbreaker, hello.
Like, please. Now I need, oh man.
Yeah. Or the Phantom Dawnbreaker. It'll be you'll crush the Dawnbreaker and it does 0 damage to anyone, and you're like, what?
But that was right to the face. I don't understand.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard, but we always joke about that. The first person I told was Malcolm when we had Malcolm on. And he's on the EU server. I said, I always picture in my mind that I'm over on the NA server and I let rip a Dawnbreaker and it does 0 damage. That some random person on the EU server gets blasted out of nowhere with a Dawnbreaker. Like the multiverse. He's standing there crafting, doing his writs, and just gets smoked with a Dawnbreaker.
Oh my gosh, it's so funny, man.
Yeah, so I think that helps me. I just smile at myself and say someone on the EU server just got smoked with a Dawnbreaker.
Got Dawnbreakered. So running around picking an herb, like, what just happened?
Yeah. Ooh, a Columbine dead. So
that's so good.
Yeah. So do you have any topics for us or any questions for us? Thanks for coming on today.
Yeah, it was really fun, man. I really appreciate you having me on and, inviting me and everything. And I can't really think of any questions. I guess just I guess, you know what, this is a question I do ask people, right? Like, I know you guys have heard of Ashes of Creation. We talk about ESO. We could talk about ESO all day. It's something we're all familiar with. But when you think about a game in development like Ashes of Creation, right? And this is, not even specific to Ashes. And I would probably even say anybody that listens to this podcast, this would be a question I'd be curious what they'd say too. So maybe they'll comment and kind of show some love and kind of share their thoughts. But, what do you guys, when you think of an MMORPG in development, right, with a scope that will have PvP in it, for example, or maybe I see, maybe whatever your preference is too. Like for me, it's PvP and combat and the server stability. And Grim kind of shared some of that stuff, but like, what would you all want to ensure that game just really did right, that a lot of your other experiences, that it maybe hasn't been the case with so far?
Want me to go first?
Yeah.
Well, we got a 5.5 minutes left, so I'll try to keep it quick. For me, if they're gonna introduce PvP and there's PvE elements as well, just separate the two. Just separate it. Don't even try to have sets that you can be used in both and then try to balance it, because it's always a poop storm every single time, no matter what. And just having just a clear delineation of, hey, this is for PvP, this is for PvE, done. Just keeping it short like that. That's what I would recommend. Just keep them separate.
Okay.
I think you have to be fearful of the power creep. Like if we look at ESO right now, we've got a crazy power creep. Sinful was just talking about, he remembers a time where 10k health, max health, was the thing. Now everybody in PvP's running around with 30k health, and
Yeah.
I'm getting ready to have a 9k weapon damage build for next patch. I'll be running around with 9k weapon damage in Blackwood, just so everybody knows. So, the power creep is real. So I think that if they take that into consideration, I'm okay if it's an open world scenario where you can run around and at any moment PvP can happen, because that's the most exciting thing for me in Imperial City. We will run around Farm Telvar and get key frags, and as fights happen, that's exciting for us. Coming on to, stepping into, like, I was on the EU server on a lobby leveling just a little while ago with a friend, and we come around the corner and here's 20 AD. PvP happens, and that's the most exciting aspect to the sewers. So I'm okay if it's an open world where PvP can happen. We just got to be really smart with the way the sets affect the PvP. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's good to hear. Definitely some of the feedback I like to share. And actually, Delty, I had him on the Ashes Pathfinder show a few weeks back, I think. And then before that, I had Steven on, and Delty, I actually was like, you want to leave a question for Steven for me to ask? Because I gathered a lot of community members' questions and stuff. And I figured, hell, he's been around the Ashes spam a little bit too. And so I figured I'd ask. And his question was specifically about the power creep, and Steven actually gave a really good answer, which I wish I could reflect on the actual quote right now. But it was a really well said answer, and it basically was just that is something they're very mindful about, and it's a big part of, like, as they're going into the design and implementation stages of combat, they're really looking at. That's something that they've this is one of the things as they talk about the server or they talk about combat, they always come back to that they are just willing to take their time and make sure it's done right from a foundational level up, because it's easier to resolve problems if that foundation's built well to begin with than it is later after, things that maybe you needed to fix were right off that foundation. When it's a foundation you got to fix and you've built on it for so long, and the Elder Scrolls, that's a big example. I always make that as an example of frame of references. When there might have been issues in, like, the code, for example, in the early days, and that wasn't resolved before the game was pushed out. Now you continue to build upon it, and that problem's there, the cracks are there, and it's really tough to go back to work on those things when a lot of other things are now relying upon that.
Yeah. That's interesting. I think the fact that Steven is proactively engaging and involved with everything, I think that's awesome. Okay, we got 2 minutes, less than 2 minutes. Where can
90 seconds.
90 seconds. Where can everyone find you at? YouTube, Twitch, where are we finding you at right now? Website?
Yeah, so you can just search me up on YouTube under either Simurgh, Simurgh, or Simurgh Gaming, or Simurgh ESO. Those are my 3 main domains. I've also got a vlog one called Phoenix. You can catch me on Twitch at twitch.tv/Simurgh, where I do a lot of live streaming. You can catch me on Twitter at Lord Simurgh, on Instagram the same, and you can check out my websites, or you can check out the websites at www.asheshq.com for Ashes of Creation, or www.simurghq.com, which looks super blank at the moment because I got to get the HQ squared away first, and then I'll be working on that and tying all stuff and things in there. So I think I had everything. Yeah, and the podcast, the LFM Podcast, Thursdays 5 p.m. CDT on my Twitch live, going to Podcast Places. Ashes Pathfinder Sunday 5 p.m. CDT live on Twitch, going to Podcast Places. I think I did it. Good.
Yep.
Okay, good.
And we got 20 seconds. 20 seconds here. So the last thing is tip jar, merchandise. What's the best way they can help you?
Just, join discord.gg/Simurgh, be part of the community, and, follow and subscribe, and, leave some comments if you enjoy, be part of the community.
Awesome. And with that said, because we are so over time, I had to start a new file. We'll catch you guys on the next one. See ya.
You're going to say, bye-bye, Argonians.
Bye-bye, Argonian.